and should the debt holder have actually given up the subject property to the respective ostensible obligor, then the respective obligations shall be refinanced under mathematically perfected economy in the resultant currency of the country, and to the like extent of contribution to facts of production, if and only if the country practices mathematically perfected economy respective to actual contribution to the pool of wealth. In other words, then, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, as we say. 6. Lawful resolution of purported debts to the former obfuscators of our promissory obligations to each other. Thus the sum of artificial purported debts to the obfuscators of our promissory obligations are to be resolved by any combination of A. Determining that indeed no such actual debt can have existed to the purported banking system. And I'm going to stop here again to elaborate on this just a bit. This is why, because no debt existed, and that we want to contest this in every way, including in court, a contest which the banking system is very unlikely to engage in, because there is no proof of the justification or integrity of what they do. This is why we want to challenge this. And so we're not just writing off our debts, we're issuing an irredeemable promise to pay in resolution of the claimed obligation so that we can refinance our debts under mathematically perfected economy as we have prescribed. So in truth, we're claiming we can pay this, but we're doing it in this way of issuing a like irredeemable promise to pay. But we're doing this in order to defeat the falsified principle forever. So if I may continue then in the alternate methods by which these obfuscated promissory obligations are to be resolved, 6b, and or honoring both the collective or individual issuance by purported debtors of just such irredeemable promises to pay as full and equally valid payment, in which case it shall be treason from the moment of a petitioner's signature for pretended financial entities or any acting agent thereof to refuse said manner of full payment from any petitioner hereby claiming such authority. Further contest of this reciprocal power of private citizens to issue irredeemable promises to pay in return for irredeemable promises to pay, if any such contest shall ensue, shall be settled only in legitimate courts representing the common interests of the people, wherein therefore, A. No private entity shall prevail in purported rights, authorities, or privileges not granted to any other. And B. Any purported court or other body of authority failing to uphold this principle shall be guilty of treason, whatever the ultimate decision of national penalties. And 6b3 then, and the people may therefore immediately cease all payment of taxations, which even to the least extent may be non-compliant with any stricture of this act, in every which case therefore, A. Any ostensible authority attempting to enforce such taxations shall be guilty of treason, whatever the ultimate decision of national penalties. And B. And any purported court or other body of authority failing to enforce this principle shall be guilty of treason, whatever the ultimate decision of national penalties. So these are the teeth of our mandate for mathematically perfected economy and absolute consensual representation. Actually, one of the recent readers described them more as fangs. And while these things may seem a bit overwhelming, the reason for going to the extents that we have in this mandate are the opposition that exists, the need to prove our case, that is not only the crime against us, but there is one and one only solution of the crime, and even in fact then to detail it all the way to an implementation of solution. So to my befuddlement, I'm often asked still, even after explaining this, well, how are we going to do this? Well, we've just gone through it. We have described the mathematics of the transformation, complete to the extent from which the people may decide to implement the mathematically perfected economy somewhat differently. Some countries may choose different rates of depreciation. Some countries, and probably all countries, will over time refine their methods of determining this proprietary determinate lifespan. And those are really the only issues, because what we have our solution is eradication of interest and an obligatory schedule of payment. Those are the only issues we have to deal with, and we have covered them in complete detail insofar as a constitutional level of law should extend, embracing the society's wishes to implement this eradication of interest and obligatory schedule of payment, which the latter of which is really the only issue that we have to contend with, obligatory schedule of payment over the proprietary determinate lifespan. That is, we have two things, and that's depreciation and proprietary determinate lifespan to determine however we will. And there isn't really any substantial penalty we're going to pay for approximating these things, especially if we devise simple means of enforcing the integrity of our promissory obligations, that is, preventing any abuse of the system, which is, of course, necessary to any system, but which is far more possible under mathematically perfected economy, because we have, as much as possible, made it possible for the obligor to fulfill the obligation. No redundant cost is imposed. Now, the final matters of this transformation in a mathematically perfected economy. I've got people in foreign countries who are asking about this, and I'd like to answer these questions basically at one time and in place, and that is here and now, at least to a sufficient basic extent. The thing that we're doing then is we're transferring our accounts from the contemporary purported banking system to this common monetary foundry. So, in effect, we have to understand what is the context of this common monetary foundry, so that we can understand, get our brains around it, and say, oh, well, this is nothing but software, and the software is nothing that really doesn't exist in the conventional banking system already. Now, as I've said, I been a software developer, and this is an issue, and in fact I've actually been on jobs to do these kinds of things, and this software exists in private hands with all the integrity in many different private development houses, with all the necessary integrity to perform the simple functions that we're discussing or needing here, and those are mere basic accounting. So basically, this common monetary foundry is a certifier of credit applying rules that we decide. And when I say that we decide, what are the factors there? The factors really are that we may decide, for instance, to abandon this bad concept, further lie of Social Security, which is already bankrupt. It's been gutted, and it's a shell of what it needs to be. But it was a wrong principle from the very beginning, because it took the money from the various people and ostensibly did other things with it which served us, but which in fact were opportunities to steal from us. And this is what has happened in a system which is unsustainable. In other words, for instance, we could lie to the people and say, well, we're going to invest that money in Wall Street and it's going to multiply in value, and this is going to decrease your costs of sustaining yourselves in retirement. Well, no, that's a lie from the very beginning, because all the profit that can be made in this further obfuscation of multiplying wealth, Wall Street, comes at our own cost. So we're paying that cost, and because others are involved in it and taking unearned profit from it, it increases our costs. So this was a lie, and the only right thing to do is to decide to sustain ourselves by saving so much of our earnings. Now, some countries might decide to make these kinds of systems mandatory. Other countries might decide that we'll leave it entirely to the individual, whatever the case may be. But there's prudent ways of doing these things, and there are reasons that not to prescribe them at this level of law. And the reason is people of one country or another country or social disposition, cultural disposition, may decide to do this differently somehow. But the basic math is, let's just say if we consider adult life to begin at age 20 and an average lifespan to be 80 or whatever, then there would be 60 years of adult life. And if we decided to work half of it just for basic round numbers, then we would be working for 30 years and retired for 30 years. So if we saved half of our income for the 30 years that we were working, that would maintain our standard of living